for it.
So hi, thank you everyone for coming to this special seminar that we're offering. Brianna Wu is one of the most interesting people and outspoken people in games right now.
That's true.
I am a big fan of your work. I'm a big fan of your writing in particular. Brianna has a well-deserved reputation for not backing down from a fight, which can be a bit of a double-edged sword, I think, at this particular moment in gaming history. But the things that she has to say are incredibly important to where we are as a society of people who are all invested in play and games. She is the founder of Giant Spacekat Studios, which is known for being a studio primarily comprised of women developers. And she's got a commitment to sort of advancing the discourse around gender balance in games and representation in games more broadly. I'm really excited to have you here, so welcome. I'm looking forward very much to what you have to say. So with that, I will pass the mic over to you.
Excellent. The theoretical imaginary mic. So. Hey, what's up, everybody? So before I start, I just want to say, if you see that I'm wearing a white and gold dress, I want you to leave this talk right now. Go get some help. There could be something very seriously wrong with you. Like you said, my name is Brianna Wu. I'm head of development at Giant Spacekat. You might know me as a very outspoken tech feminist. You might know me for some of the fun stuff that's gone on for the last year. So I threw this talk together while I was on the plane out here and last night. It's my first time to give the talk. We're going to call it Choose Your Character. It's kind of a story about my studio, where we started, and kind of what it's like to try to run a game development studio in the middle of a kind of high-profile media firestorm. So this is going to be from the gut. There's no PR person that kind of controls what I say or how I say it. It's going to be honest and true. So let's get to it. The entire mission of Giant Spacekat. I actually started this company in 2010, really 2011. My background is in being an entrepreneur. My dad, he got his medical degree in the Navy. He kind of grew up in a very, very poor town in Mississippi. He actually worked at a farm. He was so poor when he was a teenager, like loading bales of hay. And so he wanted to make a better life for himself. He went to into the Navy, got a medical degree, became a gynecologist, and kind of got on the back end of healthcare costs as they were exploding in the 80s, made a lot of money. So from there, he kind of used his money to start different businesses, and that was very much my background, like growing up in that. Growing up, we would go to lawyers' offices or accountants, all these different kinds of things. My first startup was when I was only 19 years old. I was given, $250,000 to do an animation startup. So, that's kind of my background with this. And when I started Giant Spacekat, I would describe myself, I was certainly a feminist back then, but I would also kind of describe myself as barely feminist. I was coming from other areas of tech, and my approach had always been, just be good at what you do, keep your head down, kind of don't engage on this stuff. It's not worth arguing about. In the last 5 years, it's changed my mind a little bit, so we'll get into it. What we're going to do is I'm going to start by showing you the trailer for Revolution 60. This is our game that shipped earlier this year, last year rather.
Men, my friends are dying here. It would do a lot for my morale if I understood what they were dying for.
This is the mission briefing I received before we left center.
Your mission is to infiltrate N313, arm the core, and pass control to China. If you fail this mission, it will mean an all-out nuclear war. End of line.
So, if Minuet is the commander and Unknown is the fighter pilot, what do you do?
I'm an assassin. My specialty is vehicular combat.
I can see where that would come in handy out here in the black of space.
You're pretty calm for someone that just lost a fourth of your team.
If I felt anything when I lost personnel, I wouldn't make a very good commander, would I? It's a mission holiday. It's not personal.
Don't leave me like this, Holiday. I'm broken. Do you hear me? I'm broken!
You want the easy out. You're scared. You're still an agent of chessboard. When this is over, we'll find a way. And until then, I'm ordering you to fight this.
I can't!
Where did you take them?
They're up there, and we're down here.
If you come at me, you better be ready to kill.
So, are there guys in chessboard, or is it like an all-girl thing?
So yeah, this is the very first game my company put out. It's a pretty ambitious game for a team of 5, 10, as most 11 people that have never shipped anything before. So I think this is where it kind of gets into my studio and what our mission is. Before we get into that, I want to say when I started in 2010, I designed the characters of Revolution 60. I love sexy, awesome women that kick butt. I watched every Underworld movie like 100 times, Resident Evil. But sadly, being loving that stuff and being a well-known tech feminist is not always super compatible. So we just got greenlit on Steam, and we are changing the costumes to be a little bit more armored. So I just want to put that out there. So the mission of Giant Spacekat. This is very simple. When I was growing up, I would play games like Final Fantasy VI. Well, even coming back before that, like looking at the Super Mario Brothers games. I was actually just over in your lab, and there were a bunch of the NES era characters up on your wall. It's a bunch of dudes. It's like Ice Climber, Mario, a bunch of white dudes over and over again. And for me as a gamer from the very beginning, I've been very frustrated that there aren't really people I identify with in games. Women have kind of been out of games from the very beginning, or when we're there, we're kind of a sex symbol or a love interest. That's been very frustrating for me. And I can remember when I played Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, and just being astonished by the emotional range that I was finally getting in a video game with those characters, Celeste and Terra. So, what I wanted to do from the beginning at Giant Spacekat, and this wasn't like a liberal, emotional mentality here. I wanted to make games with women characters that were awesome. And I wanted to do that because, as a cold, hard capitalist, I think there's a lot of money to be made out there. I don't know how you guys feel. There are a lot of women in the audience today. I love and will give money to games that represent me. I'm really passionate about that. I think it's like a marketplace needs that isn't being fulfilled. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to really advance narrative games on mobile. I think narrative on mobile devices generally sucks, even though there's a lot of indie people out there doing that mission. So, our first game development idea, actually, it was going to be more like Final Fantasy Tactics, kind of a top-down view at the game. And I met my co-founder, Amanda Stenquist-Warner, who had just graduated with the animation degree. And the two of us together, it was like Steve Jobs and Wozniak. We really came together, we complemented each other's strengths and weaknesses. I'm kind of more of a get out there, let's fire everything kind of woman. She's a little bit more reserved, a little bit more thinking about stuff. And together we kind of put together this idea for a game type that was, it was half Heavy Rain, it was half Mass Effect. The idea being you could kind of do QTEs, or what we call action events, on a touch interface, and kind of marry that with the Mass Effect dialogue wheel, and kind of give you different choices as you're playing along. One of the main features for our game is there are no right answers. There's no best ending for Revolution 60. No matter what you do, things are going to be good and things are going to be bad. It's kind of like life. You make your choices and you deal with the fallout from it. So, as we've gone along, the mission of Giant Spacekat, it's kind of to make games for the rest of us. People, there's a certain crowd in games that they've got their games. I just want to make games for a different audience. And, I want to run a studio culture that is at its very core, baked into it. It's this respect for everyone else. So, that's the way we're going. That's what we're excited about. Yeah, this is something that Nintendo was talking about with the when they shipped the Wii. And this is something I really, really strongly believe in. This is like a management term that Nintendo used. It's called the Blue Ocean Strategy. The idea is that there are red oceans and there are blue oceans. And red oceans they're kind of fished out. You have a lot of people over there. They're doing a lot of commerce in them. They're already working in this area of it. And to me, in game development, I think that we have red oceans that are very, very fished out. Like if you're interested in a first-person shooter, there are many, many marketplace options for you in that area. If you're looking for something like a third-person Assassin's Creed-like experience, there are many, many games out there for you. If you're interested in an RTS, there are any number of games that are out there for you. And the truth is, an indie team is just never going to be able to compete economically with a team that large with those resources. So what we are very specifically doing, our business at Giant Spacekat is this is a word I made up, neo-gamers versus classical gamers. So we want to look at this blue ocean of women gamers. And we want to look at this entire explosion of people. Just in 2007, only 17% of gamers were women. Now we are 49% of the audience. Neo-gamers, we like different kinds of games. We have different psychological predispositions. We play them for different motivations. The way we schedule our time is different. So what we want to do is, we don't want to take anything away from classical gamers, that want to do this kind of more traditional experience. We just want to go do our own thing. Again, this isn't like a hippy-dippy kind of thing. It's a money-making thing. So we shipped our game, and it did very, very well. We got 3 separate Game of the Year awards. We got rave reviews, Kotaku. If we want to get into some of the actual things that were said about our game, Revolution 60 is one of the most ambitious iOS games you'll play this year. I can't get enough of this sexy sci-fi thriller. Kotaku was raving about it. Game Breaker TV, they had some of my favorite quotes from it, calling it the next evolution of mobile game. They also said it was like the first game they played that they genuinely lost track of time in. I think it's really telling that most of our very positive reviews were from women reviewers, which is a whole nother reason you need women in game development press, but that's a whole different talk. So this is one of my very favorite quotes from us shipping this game. This is from someone that really understood what we were going for as a studio. My first aha moment in gaming was when I played Final Fantasy VIII. She got lost in the story, couldn't wait to see what happened next. And now with mobile gaming, there's this same kind of thing. We're pushing gaming to the next level. We can't wait to see where we go from here. So what we're trying to do is very straightforward. We're just trying to tell a story with a different kind of protagonist. This is not a complicated mission objective. We have 24 endings. They're all dark. There's no past fail state. And we did very, very well because of that. Okay. This is where we get into the dark stuff, and this talk is going to have some dark components to it, so I'm just telling you right now. From the beginning, we have faced tremendous amounts of blowback as a studio. We've had our work belittled from the very beginning. We've been made fun of since the very beginning. Every year we go to PAX. We've experienced harassment at PAX every year that we've gone there. And I really want to stress this. I am a classical gamer. I've been completely embarrassingly addicted to video games since 1985 when my mom made the mistake of buying me a Nintendo Entertainment System. I was actually afraid that your school is going to look at my college transcript and find out just how bad my grades were because of video games and cancel this talk. So, I am a traditional gamer. If you want to talk about TIE Fighter on PC, I can have a really long conversation about that. It's not that I disrespect that. I just want to go do something that hasn't been done here. And from the beginning, it's just been this cultural backlash that's truly baffling to me. I was looking at something. What was it? Game Developer Magazine. They released all their archives a few months ago. So I was going through and I was going, boy, what are they saying? What were they saying about women that want to develop games? What were they saying about us in the 90s? And I start going through it. And what was amazing to me is the exact same struggles, the exact same BS I get. They're exact quotes of people from that era saying, listen, if you want to be a woman game developer, I invite you to go make your own games. I'm like, oh my God, they've been saying that for 20 years. I can't believe it. So, that's kind of what happens here. It's immensely hostile from the very, very beginning. And the truth is, we can have a longer conversation about this, but games are radically changing right now. What I believe is with the iPhone in 2007, that we deal with this a lot in playtesting. So if I hand If I hand you a controller and you've never been a gamer before, I'm handing you something, 2 thumbsticks and 15 buttons on it. Do you know there are 15 buttons on a PS3 controller? Do you know how crazy that is? You know, it's confusing to normal people. If you haven't grown up as a gamer, there's this huge learning curve that you have to get past. And it doesn't help that, like, when dudes want to get their girlfriend interested in playing video games, they hand them the controller to Halo and then murder them repeatedly for hours. Like, that also doesn't help. But what happened with the iPhone in 2007 is it gave people a ground floor to get on, where you can sit here, it's a touch interface. There's not a layer of indirection. Like on a controller, if I want to walk this way, then I have to use this layer of indirection, so it's like thought, then stick, and then the stick affects the action. What's different about the touch screen is there is no layer of indirection. I touch there, it's the actions, thought, action. So it's a lot more connected to it. This lets people get in on the ground floor. And I think you can look at the outcome of what is going on in some of the innovation that's happening right now. These are 2 games, like this is my game, but you also have, you know, this is Framed, which my friend Zoe Quinn was involved with. I voted the frack out of that game for Game of the Year list. This is a really, really cool, awesome, interesting, different game. This is what we want, like more innovation. This is from my friend Jenna Hofstein. It's County Kingdom. If you have a child, you owe it to your child to go buy them this game. Jenna is a genius at game design. Like, she is the next Kim Swift. And, you know, she's out here and she's saying, like, I want to do educational games kind of suck. Like, let's make one and figure out how to make it fun. So, you know, the truth is the market is just, it's expanding right now. It's changing. You know, I would really challenge you guys to look at the PS4 and the Xbox One. I think this is such a fantastic example of what we are failing at as an industry. So, you know, you get the PS3 and you look at what's different between the PS3 and the PS4. What are the engineering problems we are choosing to solve and make a priority between the PS3 and the PS4? We are using a few more map types. We are loading more information into levels. We are using larger texture maps. I think the absolute last problem that games have right now is players are looking at the game and saying the textures aren't sharp enough. So we have these next-gen systems with additional overhead. And we're not using that additional overhead to figure out, okay, how can I make people in the background more realistic? How can I do artificial intelligence and like make the people in the world seem more real? How can I like, you know, do water dynamics? How can I come up with like new gameplay, like water dynamics? Think about this. It's extremely computationally expensive. Are we like saying, hey, now that we have all this extra power, we're going to go out here and figure out all these new problems? No. No. We are shipping the same boring, BS, played out, overfished types of games, and we're doing it all over again. Look at Far Cry 4. I love Far Cry. I've spent an embarrassing amount of time playing Far Cry. But if you look at the additional, like, the way the genre has been pushed forward between Far Cry 3 on PS3 and Far Cry 4 on PS4, it's the exact same game, exact same engine. It's barely iterated. Like, the main thing that they've worked on and upgraded is online connectivity, which doesn't really have anything to do with the additional power. We are an industry that's currently out of ideas. I'm sorry. And part of this is an economic problem because, like, you have, at the top end, you have something like Watch Dogs. You know, Watch Dogs is a hugely expensive bet for the studios. And I'm sorry to say, we have that much of a bureaucracy. It becomes very risk averse, which is why we have sequel-itis. You have people finding a franchise that they can annualize, and they ship the same game year after year after year after year. All the innovation is coming in on the indie scene. And I don't think it's a coincidence if you look at who's making games on the indie scene, it doesn't look like AAA. Because all the women I know, a lot of them, like, we are on the indie scene. Like, we don't want to work in this structure. Like Jenna, Zoe, me, you know, we're all going and doing our thing on this other scene. Yeah, you can look at people of color. There are all these different groups that are out here, and we're, you know, this is a very accessible API. So we're kind of starting over and doing our own thing here. That's why all the innovation is happening in the indie space. And I think, like, you know, it's really important for us to open up and move forward from here. So, this talk is going to be about what it's like to try to run a game development studio in the middle of a media firestorm. So, before we kind of get into what has happened in my life, I just want to really stress this. I didn't get into game development to come up here and tell you a horror story about what it's like to be a woman that's a well-known figure in this field. I'd rather talk to you about anything else. It's professionally very irritating to me that I'm constantly invited to come do talks on gender issues. I'm never invited to come talk on Unreal Engine when I'm one of the biggest experts on Unreal, on mobile in the entire world. I would rather talk about Star Wars, dance music, your Instagram lunch, anything else. So, this is kind of where we are. So I just want to put that out there. This is not fun for me. I think there's a real, something that's really frustrating to me is we kind of ignore what women are saying until it gets to the point of harassment and death threats. And then people are kind of interested in shoving a mic in her face and saying, like, tell me how it sucks, because this is going to be a lot of clickbait. And, we've been talking about these issues for years. So. Okay, so looking at where this started. One of the misconceptions I feel about Gamergate is it started with the hashtag. And the truth is, the people that are harassing Zoe Quinn and me, they're the same ones that started attacking Anita 2 years ago when she launched Feminist Frequency. I guess it was 3 years ago now. So, just to kind of catch up, if you aren't familiar with all the backstory, Anita Sarkeesian starts Feminist Frequency, this Kickstarter to kind of document what's happening to women in games. You have a bunch of bullies that feel like their culture is being threatened, and they start to, they basically start harassing her. They send her death threats, rape threats. They make games that threaten to beat her up. They start telling her she's not a real gamer. She doesn't know anything about it. Even before she's said a word, they feel under attack and they start terribly, terribly harassing her. I think Anita is very correctly, the woman that's kind of, the queen of our movement. Because, she was the first one to stand up and say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to talk about this. She sat on all those, she made it through all those threats. And, I think she very correctly showed all of us, if we stand up to this stuff, we can get some stuff done. She's been tremendously effective. So I think, a lot of the tensions that are boiling over right now in game development, I think they very correctly, I think it's fair to say Anita was the first one to really stand up for this. So I want to flash you guys back to July of this year. I don't know Samantha Allen super well. I've been a really big fan of her work for a long time. I do a podcast called Isometric on 5x5 with Maddie Myers. She's Maddie Myers' best friend. So Giant Bomb is a journalism institution in our industry. It is the poster child of bro game journalism. This is a place that kind of off-started with some people that left GameSpot, and they kind of made a niche from not really reviewing games or covering games, but being a bunch of friends to hang out every single week and talk about it. What's frustrating for me as a feminist is, I feel like women are often excluded from the conversation. Giant Bomb is the worst of this. Giant Bomb chooses to not hire women repeatedly. Every time they have a new position come up, they don't hire a woman, they don't hire a black person, they don't hire a gay person. They hire mirrors of themselves every single time. There was a really well-known, following Ryan Davis's death, they had a position open up at their company. And I won't get into the politicking behind the scenes, but there were some people going, I really hope Giant Bomb finally hires a woman. They didn't. Didn't really surprise anybody that was watching it or knew the people involved, but they didn't. So Samantha Allen at that point she was writing a lot for Polygon. And, she didn't even write an article about this. She made a tweet critiquing Giant Bomb. And what happened to her was horrific. It was deplorable. So she basically had a mob sent after her. If you're watching Samantha's Twitter, which she's actually deactivated in the meantime, you had people threatening to rape her. You had people going after her. You had people coming after her, dead naming her, just attacking her brutally. They actually harassed and bullied her to the point that she actually quit the industry. I thought Samantha was one of our very best, like, smartest voices. And we lost this because of internet harassment. To me, what was really, the thing that I lost sleep about during this was specifically Jeff Gerstmann, who I personally have a lot of respect for. He stood up to the Kane and Lynch 2 controversy of them trying to change his coverage very famously. But, you know, his site, which chooses not to hire women, chooses not to hire black people, chooses to not hire gay people, his site chose to stay completely silent while my friend Samantha is being harassed. Earlier that year in January, I had Giant Bomb users after me, after I critiqued them for how, not really allowing, kind of minimalizing the voices or games of women during their Game of the Year coverage. A bunch of Giant Bomb fans like wrote me, they threatened to rape me, they threatened to murder me. I had one writing me like the most vicious threat you've ever seen in your life. It makes my blood boil when I read it. Jeff Gerstmann was silent with that. He was silent when this happened to Samantha. And eventually she just quit. And we lost one of our best and brightest voices about that. Eventually, after she quit, they came to her, and they didn't come to her. They've never talked to her, but they did write a very lukewarm statement, kind of saying, "Hey, we don't like harassment. Harassment's bad, guys." Just very lukewarm, don't really come out, and that's the end of it too. And Jeff Gerstmann has never contacted Samantha to apologize for what users did to her. I was so unbelievably angry when I saw this happening. I remember the night after she quit, and I was lying on the couch at 4 a.m. and I was so disgusted with our industry and our silence, which doesn't freaking cut it anymore. And I've seen this happen over and over again with guys that want to label themselves as good guys, whatever that means, and then just do nothing. Like letting this happen over and over again. I was so filled with anger and hurt at that moment. Like I swore that I was going to do what I had to do to make this change. A few weeks after that, I wrote Ben Kuchera at Polygon, and I said, "Ben, you've got to let me write a piece about this." And we wanted to respect Samantha in her decision to kind of leave the industry. And she's happier now. She's doing journalism, just doesn't talk about games. And I wrote a piece called No Skin Thick Enough, which ended up going mega viral on the internet. And all I did was I went and I talked to my female friends in the industry. I just wrote about what we experienced. Things like people writing really gross fanfic, like sexual fanfic, and publishing and sending it to women in the industry chapter by chapter with really lurid, gross sexual explanations of what they feel like they're going to do to her. Or like my friend Nicole over at Giant Bomb. My friend Nicole over at IGN, who did a very famous podcast Girl Fight. And how whenever she would write or talk about it, people would like sea lion her videos, kind of degrading her, saying like, you're not hot enough to have an opinion here. And I just wrote this mega viral piece about it. And it started making me a target from there. Zoe is another Boston game developer, and I didn't know her well before all of this started, but I certainly knew her professionally. And I was on vacation after I shipped Revolution 60 last year. And this is when Gamergate kind of officially started. I'll get through it as quickly as I can. You probably know what happened here. But basically, long story short, she had a ex-boyfriend release a bunch of hearsay about her private life. Some substantiated. Starts a blog, and basically has the express goal to destroy her career professionally. So you have an entire internet fiasco over a woman's private life. Starts with Adam Baldwin, starts a hashtag Gamergate, with started these viral attack videos against my friend Zoe. And I actually did a lot of research on this, looking at things that have happened to women in the history of games. What has happened to Zoe? I don't know how you can call it anything but the most sexist thing that has ever happened to any woman in this field, period. And what makes me angry is the way we whitewashed what happened to Zoe, and now we just dance past it with this BS line about how Gamergate is about ethics and journalism. Gamergate started as a mission to harass my friend Zoe Quinn out of the industry. That was the express goal from the very, very beginning. And let's just be clear and accurate about this. So, from here, I remember immediately after this piece was published, after, Adam Baldwin starts with his sexist crap, I remember going to PAX, and, I remember people, threatening to wear t-shirts to, harass her in person at PAX Prime this year. It's like, the entire goal from the beginning is to harass Zoe out of video games. And from here, it just starts going after women one by one, harassing us out of the industry. We lost Jen Frank. Jen Frank has been a really long-time writer. She's been in the industry forever. They start attacking her Twitter explodes. There's a certain point where you go, why am I doing this? Why am I here? Why keep doing this? They run the playbook. It's the same thing over and over and over. Attack the woman, discredit the woman, make the woman a controversy, attack her looks, attack her love life, attack anything until she just quits. Again, they did it to her. They did it to my friend Maddie Bryce. They've tried to do it to Catherine Cross. Lee Alexander, she wrote a very fair piece talking about how games are changing and the idea of this gamer identity is over. They went after her. Total Biscuit this morning was attacking Lee Alexander, for no reason whatsoever, just because it's fun to harass women. This is the playbook. They go after us, they harass us, they harangue us until they quit. I'm not going to tell you who this is from, but this came in, October of this year. This is from one of the women I've just talked to you about. She was saying this, we're going to lose Gamergate. Guys, we are currently losing this. We are hemorrhaging women. Women are quitting. If we do end up winning this, this is going to be a really Pyrrhic victory. Intel very famously kind of caved into their demands, and it was just like this entire sea change was going forward. And these people were winning this war. And this is where we kind of are when it comes to where I am in the story. I was really mad. I just was not going to take this anymore. So this is how I kind of got involved in Gamergate. This all started with a fan of my show, Isometric, on 5x5, took some of my quotes about, I had been a little outspoken on Gamergate, not in a huge way. Took some of the things I had tweeted and made a meme about them. Kind of gentle quotes, all of these are accurate, kind of making fun of Gamergaters. What they ended up doing was they took this, and because I made fun of Gamergate, they spent an entire day kind of taking this meme and turning it around to attack me with. They made up vicious lies about me. They made up a lie that the child in this picture is autistic, and that I was making fun of autistic people. They threatened to rape me. They threatened to murder me. They started going after me, my husband, my company. And it scared the hell out of me when this happened. I was actually, you can go listen to the Isometric show the night before it happened, and my voice was shaking because I was so terrified of these people. And I just stayed off the internet. And I came back the next day, and this is going to have some language, so I apologize. But I slept on it. I got my nerve back. I went for a run. And I came back the next day, and I said, "Fuck you. I'm not going anywhere. You're not going to bully me here. I don't care if you attack me. I just say in no uncertain terms. I drew a line in the sand, and I said, I'm not going to let you run this playbook on me the way you've run it on my friends." And this is where it got really bad for me. I was watching the 8chan chat room where they were kind of orchestrating these attacks on me. And they started investigating me, my life, my company, where I live. And I actually watched them dox me live. And you can read this kind of famous death threat that they sent me. Guess what, bitch? I know where you live. They dox me. I've got K-bar. I'm coming to your house so I can shove it up your ugly feminist cunt. I'm going to rape your filthy ass until you bleed, then choke you to death with your husband's tiny Asian penis. Your mutilated corpse will be on the front page of Jezebel tomorrow, and there isn't jack shit you can do about it. If you have any kids, they're going to die too. I don't give a fuck. They'll be feminists anyway. I hope you enjoy your last moments alive on this earth. You did nothing worthwhile with your life. This is the moment, it's a moment of like character. I think anyone, if this were sent to you with your address right there, would kind of scare the hell out of you. And I didn't stay silent. The reason I chose not to stay silent comes back to that Facebook post that I showed you. I thought about that so much, where that person was talking about how we were losing this fight. What I was really frustrated about was our media in game journalism was choosing to stay completely silent on this issue. IGN would not cover Gamergate, would not cover what happened to Zoe. The men of that staff didn't think it was important. Don't write about it. Game Informer, silence. Giant Bomb, silence. See no evil, hear no evil. No one wants to talk about what's going on with women in the industry. And I said, God damn it. If they're not going to get it done, I am going to get it done. And you can go look at the media that I did afterwards. I went on a press assault. That tweet ended up going mega viral, and people started inviting me on their shows. You can see me in these clips. I am barely holding it together. My hair is frazzled. I'm not sleeping from stress. And I reached down inside myself for that little bit of strength that I had to kind of pull it together to tell what was happening to industry women, to the world. I went on MSNBC, CNN, PBS, BBC repeatedly, NPR, Guardian. I just did media after media after media after media after media. I cannot stress this enough. I was barely holding it together psychologically at that point. I had to get this done because game journalism was silent. I had to do that because men of this field were choosing to do nothing. And I realized if someone didn't stand up to these bullies, we were going to keep on hemorrhaging women. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. We'll get back more into the saga of Gamergate, but I think this is a really important point to take a moment. And ask yourself, like Gamergate, where does Gamergate come from? What is the real problem with Gamergate? Something people tell me all the time is it's like a bunch of 12-year-old trolls. Like, that's what people like to think. I disagree with that, not just because the average age of a gamer is now 37. I think that Gamergate is just a symptom of a disease in our industry. I think the disease is, white straight male gamers have been made the center of the universe for 30 freaking years in our industry. They're always the hero. You can look back to the culture of the NES in the 80s. And you can look at the iconography or Captain N or the way that they have the posters there. It's never a woman there. It's always this white male player that's there as the hero. And that figure has been the center of gaming for 30 years. They've catered to every single adolescent male fantasy. Rescuing a girl, being so hyper awesome macho that you end up sex object, getting catered to by women. People like to blast Jupiter Ascending, which I think is very correctly labeled like someone threw $100 million at a 14-year-old, girl on Tumblr's blog. I think that's very fair. But that is literally what, the culture of games have been for 30 years, catering to every single whim of this very specific kind of player. So you have the game, you have basically the publishers that repeatedly look at Assassin's Creed. Look how many Assassin's Creed games there have been. The only game that stars a woman is on Vita. It's honestly not very good. They keep making it for this one type of consumer and the woman is barely present. So then you look at who is reviewing the games. From the beginning, game journalism has been the domain of men. Men dominate this field. Men tend to evaluate all the games that we do critically. And these men do not really bring feminist critiques to the table. I can't tell you how many times I've played a game where there's some like giant-breasted damsel in distress in the game, and it just goes completely unremarked on by the men that are reviewing it. So the people that are evaluating the culture have consequences for everyone else. So, when we look at Gamergate, I kind of honestly see these people as victims. I see them as people that have kind of been raised in this sewage, and they've kind of grown up and they have this really aggressive, angry attitude in ways that they don't understand because of that. If you talk to a Gamergater, it's really clear that they're terrified their culture is going to be taken away. I did a story during lunch. I was talking about growing up in Mississippi and how Trent Lott did this very famous poll. And they were trying to figure out a message to run on in an election. And it was one question test through the roof. And the question was like something to give to the voter. Democrats are trying to take away your culture. And they wanted to see how people would respond to this. That question tested through the roof with voters. Like white males just responded crazily, aggressively to that question. And what that question was able to do was kind of incite this anger or this fear inside of these Southerners that they were going to have their culture taken away. And I think in that same way, Gamergate is kind of tapping into a certain kind of consumer that bases their identity on being a gamer. Like, I love video games, but I don't think of myself primarily as a gamer. That's not my identity. I see myself as a leader. I see myself as an entrepreneur. I see myself as a wife. But, gamer is a hobby for me. I think for a certain kind of consumer, it really taps into their identity, and they need that to be that. I think they're terrified it's going to be taken away. So, before I play this video, this is kind of getting back to my story. I want to tell you guys legally, I realize there's some controversy about this particular person right now that's been in the press. I can tell you I'm unable to comment on this legally, but I can show you the video.
Oh, YouTube, this is Jay's right here, and this is my fucking car.
This was, we'll come back to it. This was sent to me, what was it, a few months ago, a month ago, but basically kind of escalating this intimidation that I've gotten. I've had now 47 death threats to me sent in the last, just the last 5 months. So this is kind of one of the worst of them. I'm gonna play it for you. I want you to imagine what it was like sitting there and getting this sent to you, because this person sent me messages earlier in the day saying he was en route to my house with weapons.
Oh, YouTube, this is Jay's right here, and this is my fucking car, or my mom's car, that when I was street racing, could not perform! Couldn't fucking perform on the road, and now the bitch shit is crashed, okay? I didn't kick the windshield because it's made of bullshit plastic from Chase, and those, I wasn't even fucking drugs, I was just racing, like normal, I was trying to street race on the fucking highway, and look at this bullshit, look at this shit, totally useless. I hit and I fucking rolled on the ice, fucking rolled down here, and now look at this piece of shit. I'm a street racing god! Fuck! I'm a street racing god! And this is all because of Iron, and the rest of these tourists, they're fucking ready to do this, and this isn't my fault, and just because the road was slippery doesn't mean I'm not street racing god!
I'm sorry, hold on, wait a second.
This is Jay's right here.
Stupid. Anyway, it gets into there where this person starts threatening like a Operation Woopocalypse, where he talks about how he's going to deliver me justice in this really terrifying video to go forward. So I had this sent to me. I had other people like wearing masks, threatening to come kill me, and you basically have this culture of intimidation that's going forward. From there, it kind of goes into the Law and Order episode that came out, what was it, 3 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago? most surreal thing that's ever happened in my life is to see like these actors reading actual lines of death threats and intimidation that I've gotten. Like, do you know how weird that is to see a character based on you, like, sexually assaulted and sent out of the industry, like reading your exact death threats? I mean, also seeing the police actually doing something, that was pretty weird. Yeah, so it's kind of, and this is where it gets into like women's suffering is entertainment. You know, it shouldn't be entertainment. This should be our lives, you know, but it's really strange to me that people just want to hear about this all the time with media. And I think there's good intentions for a lot of it, but it's like we don't even care about women until their lives are on the line. So to bring this back to me being the center of the studio, guys, like, again, I did not get into this field to be a feminist. I started speaking out on feminism because I saw the culture of game dev being impossible for me to do my job. There's a question if I can have a career or not. It affects the kind of coverage I get. You know who's not going to cover my game or any of the games featuring women that my studio makes? IGN's not going to cover it. Giant Bomb is not going to cover it. Game Informer doesn't care. They're catering for a very specific kind of consumer. So you have all the mechanisms here that are kind of set up by men for men. So the reason I started speaking on feminism is this is a question whether or not I can have a job here and women at my studio can have a job. This is important stuff to fight for. So, you know, like, I'm told all the time by gamergators that, like, you know, you just want to do this for attention, you know, you're doing this for financial reasons. And I want to tell you guys honestly and clearly what it's like to be a woman that's at the center of a media firestorm constantly. So, how does it affect sales? One common criticism from gamergators that I get is Brianna's just doing this to get sales for her game. I will tell you right now, I've lost a ton of money with Gamergate. It has affected my ability to do my job. It has slowed the shipment of my game by months. I lose at least a day or week currently interfacing with law enforcement and dealing with harassment online. I actually had to hire a separate person at my company whose sole job function is to handle harassment and interface with law enforcement, because it was at the point where I just was never, for months, I was doing nothing to do with development at all. Unreal Engine, I hadn't even opened it up the entire time we were working on developing Rev 60 PC. My team is over there just working on that while I'm trying to survive. Our company is essentially leaderless for months on end. So did like being on TV, in the newspaper, all that, how does that affect Rev 60 sales? This is the honest truth of the matter. It's barely affected it. It's barely affected it. Because the mobile experience is the way that it is, on iOS, it's very much a consumer, like a point of sale kind of operation. So when we launched, we were featured by Apple. So you could boot up your phone and go to the App Store, and then Rev 60 was on your opening screen there. We ended up getting, it was, I forget the exact number, it was like such a massive, most of our profit for shipping Rev 60 came from that. And then, you know, like we had a certain median level of revenue coming in, and then after Gamergate come up, it like went up by that much. So it is honestly, in the terms of like development, it's been a trivial amount of money that my studio has made for Rev 60 like being out there. So I gotta say, this is frankly a lie. The truth is, we have a leader that's kind of embroiled in this controversy. Like, I'm happy to be here at your college today talking about this because I'm very passionate about feminism, but I'm not in the studio developing today. You know, I'm coming here, I'm talking to you guys about this because it's important. So, and the honest truth of the matter is this is a huge distraction from my career. This is not helping my career. I'm going to write a book. I actually had just signed a contract with one of the world's biggest literary agents about this. Working at law enforcement sucks. They don't take any of this stuff seriously. They don't give a damn. Individually, they're all very nice people that care. Like, cops are out there, they care. They're putting their life on the line. You know, they could be shot at any time. And I have respect for that. And they're good people that care about keeping their communities safe. But the psychological priorities of a beat cop don't really translate to Twitter harassment or death threats online. So what I've repeatedly found, Arlington police are clueless when it comes to this stuff. They've been no help whatsoever. In fact, they've been actively hostile at times when I've invited them to my house to file police reports. You know, I am legally unable to tell you which higher agencies I'm working for or working with on prosecutions, but I can say this, it is a fact that between Zoe, Anita, and I, we've had hundreds and hundreds of death threats, many of which very specific and actionable. This is over a time period of over 2 years. Can you name anyone that's been arrested at this point for any threat they've sent to anyone, any woman at the center of this? Any court case at all? Has anyone been given a ticket that we know about? Has anything happened at all? Nothing. It is an uphill battle. Law enforcement is completely unable to address this. And I can tell you on like the other side of this, we are working behind the scenes to get some accountability here in ways I can't talk about. But, you know, it's been a really big uphill battle. For me personally, my Twitter presence, if you're a software engineer, everyone out here needs to go get a Twitter account yesterday. Your ability to be on Twitter and to make friendships and have relationships is critical to your ability to network and get jobs once you graduate from college. My Twitter is a war zone. You've seen my Twitter. Is my Twitter a war zone?
It's a war zone.
It's a war zone. Constantly, it does not matter what I say. I could do an experiment where I tweeted, I just had salmon for lunch. You know, I swear to you, Gamergaters would be on there attacking me about it. So it's this just constant draining effect on me psychologically. You cannot eat that kind of steady diet of hate and not have it affect you somehow. This is from a Newsweek study where they were looking at, like, is Gamergate actually about ethics in journalism? So here are two dudes. They're actual journalists. So then you have Zoe Quinn, not a journalist. Lee Alexander's a journalist, yeah. Mention Kotaku as a journalistic enterprise, sort of. And I mean, in the sense that they do primarily blogs, but you know, there's Anita Sarkeesian and there's me. So what is Gamergate actually tweeting about and thinking about? You know, it's attacking women that have nothing to do whatsoever with journalism. You know, it's the pretext of Gamergate I believe in. I do think we have an ethics problem in the game industry. But I think this movement is very clearly at its core about harassing feminists. I alluded to this before. Guys, a lot of what I do, I can't talk about publicly. You know, at my heart, I'm more of a, I won't want to say diplomat, but I try to get stuff done behind the scenes. And what I do is I do use this moment to make friendships and connections, to talk to people in a position to get things done. Twitter, I have conversations with Twitter. I've had conversations with Reddit. I've had, you know, conversations with people in media. You know, I've talked to members of government about this, talking about our experiences, kind of talking about what needs to change here. Because the truth is, all four of these institutions are completely failing women right now. So this comes back to our studio. What is our next step? You know, we have a hit game. Where are we going from here? You know, we had our PC release come out on Steam Greenlight. It was a war zone again. We got Steam greenlit in 2 days, which is lightning fast. That's how much support our game had from people that loved it. But, you know, it was people attacking it. Like, the forums were so overfilled with personal attacks against me, like, we ended up having to shut it down. So, you know, in the midst of doing all of that, like, where are we going as a company? So we're working on the venture capital scene. We're going to make a really big play for VR. I want Giant Spacekat to be in on the ground floor, developing narrative-based games, particularly for women or other underrepresented consumers. I think this is not a liberal fantasy. This is a greedy money-making fantasy here. I think there's a lot money to be made by meeting the need of the consumer that is traditionally ignored. So for us, we are working on growing our studio and taking like the things that we learn, even though we have all these distractions, taking it to the next level. And I think that comes to, was it worth it? And I think it's a hard question to answer. And to kind of answer that, I want to tell you a little bit about my past and where I grew up. When I think I was 7 years old, 6 or 7, my dad ended up graduating from the Navy and he moved back to Mississippi. So I found myself in this culture that was really hard for me to understand. Mississippi, very correctly, was said to be a state sweltering with the heat of oppression by Martin Luther King. So, the events that happened during integration in the 60s are still very strongly reverberating through the South today. Ku Klux Klan members, can you raise your hand if you've ever met a Ku Klux Klan member? Because I've met like 10 or 20 in the course of my life. There you go. This is one very famous civil rights incident that happened in Mississippi. So you have these 3 people that were basically taken and murdered by law enforcement in Mississippi. So they were trying to register black people to vote in the South, and they were taken and murdered. So you have this culture that, even as I was growing up there in the 80s and 90s, is virulently racist. It's terribly homophobic. It's very sexist in ways it doesn't want to think about. And all the time as I was growing up, I was just surrounded by this. This is a really famous incident. This is the James Meredith incident. This happened at my school, the University of Mississippi. This building right here is the Lyceum. You can go by the Lyceum today, and so it's where James Meredith, because of civil rights legislation, wanted to go enroll in the University of Mississippi, which is a very, very white racist place. And they actually had to dispatch the National Guard to my school to escort him into the Lyceum to be able to register for classes. From white, angry Southerners like rioting, you can walk by that building today and see bullet holes that they intentionally left there from this specific riot. Mississippi was on fire. This is 1962. This is when I was there. This is the exact same place today. This is an activity that very famously happens in the Grove. It's called, it's tailgating. And this is what it's like there all the time. I could tell you, growing up in this culture, you're surrounded by people, they're enjoying their lives, and they enjoy football, and they like who they are, and they place a lot of identity in who they are. But they don't want to think or talk about racism. They don't want to talk about what happens to black people in Mississippi. This is the culture that I grew up in. And I have to tell you, the entire time I was growing up, it just did not compute with me. I could not stand it. That, I didn't understand why everyone was so unwilling to talk about this stuff. And for me, I used to think it was like a problem with Southerners. Like Southerners, there was something broken with them morally. This is the same thing that's wrong in game development, with all respect. This is game development today. These are the consumers out there having a party, and they don't want to think about what's happening to women. They don't want to think about what's happening to black people or gay people. They just don't want to talk about it. They're unwilling to examine their actions. They're unwilling to talk about hiring women. And I just can't take it anymore. This game is literally, I saw the story yesterday. Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur 1 came out. I loved playing with Ivy. She was a really cool character fighting style. She's become more and more sexualized over the time. And when you look at this question, it's like, do we need feminist critics here in the game development industry? The answer is, oh my God, do we need feminist critics here in the game development industry? Like, this cannot go on. This can be some of the market. I think these games should exist, and that's fine. but it is the rule and not the exception. And where we're talking about feminist critiques, we desperately need this as an industry. So, you know, for Giant Spacekat, are we going to stay here? I mean, am I going to keep, you know, taking up this, dealing with this heat day by day? And there's a quote I think about absolutely every day when I think about quitting. It comes from the movie Aliens. It's when Hicks, he's sitting there, his face is burned off. You know, he says, "We're not going anywhere." That's exactly how I feel. I feel like half my face is burned off. And, you know, I'm just going to stick with it because I'm mad. And this is really worth changing. So with that, I'm going to leave it up to questions. So. Do you have questions? Yeah, what's up?
So this is more about game development, but
Thank you.
You mentioned that you want to get into a VR, right?
Yes.
So do you think that's going to have the same kind of barrier to entry with, you know, it's not going to be like a simple touch interface that someone's used to. Will you have trouble attracting women to VR?
Yes.
Well, do you have any like plans to kind of like make it more accessible?
I think the way we're figuring is someone's going to figure this problem out eventually, and I think that the way to go forward and solve it is to use interfaces that are very simple. So if you look at the problems that we're taking to solve this, I swear it's like the Bugs Bunny cartoon where you see the same background just going through, like Bugs Bunny is running through time and time again. What are we doing? Like the biggest technology I saw last is someone standing on a ball with a gun and they're figuring out how to murder people with VR. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe we're doing this. So I think that if you're looking at the technology, you start figuring out the nausea problem, I think, is the biggest barrier. And then I think it's got to be making the interface as dead simple as possible. I personally think haptic gloves are going to be the technology that fixes it eventually, but I think we'll see. So, cool. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. More questions? Come on, we have to. There we go. Yeah.
Maybe I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the workplace situation at your studio. You know, you mentioned it's open to more diversity, and you know, like, you know, I read some sort of, you know, academic feminist talking about, for example, crunch time is a practice which causes women not to be in the industry, or because they have other, you know, things that. I was just wondering if you could talk about the practices.
You know what I think is the most interesting thing about our studio is if you look at what happens when you get a bunch of women together and give them some money and just see what kind of culture comes out, is the complete polar opposite of the rest of Game Dev. Giant Spacekat is a hyper-collaborative studio. So, you know, some studios you have like one person at the top that issues orders from on high. Giant Spacekat is a hyper-collaborative company. Now, I want to be really clear here. I do have a boss card where I will say, like, sorry, I hear your input, you're overruled, we've got to go this way, discussion is over. Because if you don't have that kind of leadership, projects just get mired. And I'm not saying groupthink, but why I'm saying, like, who was I talking to earlier about Mass Effect 2 and the writer for Jack that came through and thought a scene would work some way and then heard feedback from his team and his scene wasn't playing the way he did and they went and rewrote it. That is exactly what we do at Giant Spacekat. We have our work, other people look at it, if there's a difference of opinion, we come through and we bring in a third person to tie break. It's very respectful. You know, like moving forward, part of our talent acquisition strategy is very specifically to reach out to parents. I think parents are shown the door in game development in ways we barely talk about. Our goal is to, like, don't go after, like, to find these people, they're kind of like kicked out the door of the rest of game dev and say, hey, come work for us. If you gotta go pick your kid up at 5, I can respect that. Like, wow, what a freaking sacrifice for us. And to, like, create a culture where that's respected. So, you know, it's just it's a different priority. And I think this speaks to the value of having women in management. And, you know, it's a two-way street. Like, if I look at a game like anything Riot puts out, I couldn't develop a game like that in a million years because I don't give a damn about that game type or the psychocognitive like priorities of why that's enjoyable to some players. I just don't get it. Or a first-person shooter, I can't develop a game like that. But I can develop these other games. So, you know, I think it's where diversity, it's not that this kind of game doesn't need to exist, it's that we need different approaches. So, does that answer your question? Cool. What's up?
So, I mean, one of the things we're seeing in the indie scene and one of the most powerful new design spaces is the autobiographical game.
Huh.
Zoe
Really?
Quinn's
Yeah,
Depression Quest,
yeah.
right? The idea of games as a way of communicating something
Personal
about
experience,
your
yeah.
personal experience. Have you thought about whether there's a game in what you're going through right now?
Yeah. Has anyone else here played Danganronpa, Trigger Happy Havoc? So this is a game type I've thought a lot about. I want to tell a story about despair and having no one out there listening or doing anything about what's going on. So we actually do have a game design in the works for that. It involves Minuet, one of the characters in Rev 60, what happens to her after the ending happens, which I won't get into. So, yeah, I think it would be an interesting experience. Like, I think this is an interesting talk today. I don't know how you guys feel, but I feel like there's interesting material here. So, cool. Do we have other questions? What's up?
Yeah. So, following Gamergate and all sorts of the conversations happening online,
sure.
I find that one of the ways that that the critique gets shut down is via the term white knighting, right? Like you're being a white knight.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it does is it sort of diffuses the possibility of critique because you can't even stand up for anything because you're just like a white knight.
Right.
So how do we change the terms? Yeah. How do we change the terms of the conversation to make it more productive? How do we?
I mean, I don't accept that kind of criticism. I want to be really clear. Men have more power in this conversation to change it than I do. If I'm talking online, I'm just Brianna Wu, that crazy feminist chick. Like if you're talking about it, you have peer respect in a way I don't. You have more power. Like if you're saying to a dude, "Hey, that's not cool, knock it off," that matters more than what I say. So I just encourage you, like, don't buy into their silencing tactics. Just push past it. You're right. You should stand up for what you believe the same way I did. So, yeah, cool.
I had recently had the experience of being a writer for a small game company, North Carolina. Unfortunately, it folded when we couldn't get the product out the door. But one of the conversations that came up around the table, and everyone in the company were friends, we're all basically on the same page. But we had a situation whereby some of the only people we could sell to were people who wanted like hypersexualized images, or they were members of very anti-feminist organizations. And
sure.
The conversation came to like, are we going to refuse service to these people, or do we have to cater to them in order to get ahead? And that was really, like eventually we just had to say, well, we need to get off the ground. We need to cater to these people, unfortunately. But but at some point we're going to have the power to say, no, we're not going to do this. But unfortunately, we didn't get to that point. But it seems like it's so very difficult to break into that. Is there any hope on the horizon?
I mean, I want to say very clearly, games like Dead or Alive should exist. Games with hypersexualized women, I don't have a problem with them existing in theory. So, if you have to do that to get off the ground, I'm not going to judge you. I can say for us in our company, we from the beginning have said, I don't give a damn about that kind of consumer. I've never kissed the ass of that kind of consumer. If you're a toxic gamer, I will make fun of you. And, just like being outspoken on that. It's gotten me a reputation where other kinds of gamers see the genuineness of my intentions. Like Rev 60 may not be a perfect game from a feminist point of view, but I think you can really tell that it informs my feelings on it. So I don't know. I guess, make your choices. I think it's the red ocean versus blue ocean question again. I mean, if you're going after these gamers with this specific game type, I mean, you're fishing that ocean, and you're gonna have to like give bait for that kind of fish. I'm going over here, so that's how I choose to deal with it. So, cool. What's up? I do want to get questions from women too. Just saying. So, cool. No. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, first, I just want to say that it was, I guess, watching the talk, it was very powerful.
Thank you.
I've read those harassment tweets, but watching you read them was just, that was hard.
It's been a hard year.
but then my question, I'm a software engineer. I work at a company. We have a small engineering team that's not very diverse. And my coworker and I have talked about why that is, and we've noticed that the people who apply to our positions tend to be white and male or Asian.
Right.
And so we realized that it's, you know, do you have anything to say as someone who tries to lead a diverse company?
Oh, yeah.
Of how we can draw in applicants from more diverse backgrounds?
Let me tell you how you do it. You come over here after this talk, you come over to Catherine, you go, hey Catherine, and you get to be good friends with Catherine. And you just make a genuine connection with someone. And then you take it from there. It's like once you start meeting people and networking with the different group, then you're gonna open up different doors. The problem with the hiring strategy that you're describing is it doesn't work. It's never worked. It's not gonna work. If you throw out applicants online, you're expecting women to apply, you're gonna fail. I'm sorry. You have to go out and actively seek different kinds of candidates. You know, it's weird for me because I have the opposite problem in Giant Spacekat. I know so many women in the industry that, you know, sometimes I actually know more women than I do men. So, you know, it matters who you network with. It matters who you're talking to. And, you know, part of, especially if you're a project manager, I am always looking for talent and ideas and people to work with. So you kind of have to, it happens proactively, not, you know, by sitting and waiting for resumes to come in. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Cool. Awesome. Do you have more questions? All right, yes.
Okay, so I was interested in your concept of your game that you play on an iPhone, that you use the touch screen interface.
Yes.
What, and I'm not from a computing background, I don't know about gaming, but what about the new touch screens for the larger screens that people are using for computer monitors? Is that a more proactive interface?
It could be. The way we solved when we brought to PC, we thought a lot about this because what people call QTEs suck.
Right.
Like when it's press X to pay respects. That's not fun. So what we did is we looked to Typing of the Dead, which is this Dreamcast game. So we asked ourselves, how can we use this control to make this fun? Because if I'm doing, if Holiday's doing a bicycle kick, you know, and I draw a circle on a screen, it's fun there. On a computer, so what we do is if a character betrays you on a bridge, you have to type in the emotion that your character's feeling in a certain time limit. So that's how we solved it. I could say from the wider problem of touchscreen monitors, you run into the problem of gorilla arm eventually because reaching out and doing this for a long time hurts your arm and it gets really tiring. So personally, I don't think gesture-based interfaces are going to be really good for a long time. I think if you do them with micro movements, they might work. But I mean, I work 80 hours a week on a computer. You know, doing this is going to get tiring eventually. You know, so I think it's a problem we're still solving. So, honestly, I think something that's really exciting right now is we're getting past flatland. I feel like we've taken this staring at a screen as far as it can go, which is why VR is a more interesting problem to solve right now. So I'm really excited about where we're going from here. PS5 is not going to be another box you hook up. It has prettier textures. We're going in a different direction. So let's get some more questions. Yeah.
Do you have any comments on it seems often in this space there's a kind of conflation between sort of male and female and expert casual gaming, right? The assumption that women are the casual gamer. Yeah. But do you have any comments on that? Also just from the perspective of game design and the way you think about the expert gamer in a different way that doesn't just assume that it's a male.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. It's something I struggle with in my language. I think if you're trying to be accurate, neo-gamers are more casual and they are more women. So I'm sorry, it's fair to say that it's factual that it's not even a skill level thing. It's not that women are less natively intelligent, but if you're talking about comfort with more complex mechanics, it is simply true there is a gender divide there. If you look at that, you know, as a study. I don't think it means women are any less capable of doing that. There are plenty of women that fall into the category of classic gamer, you know, that do kind of very comfortable with 2 sticks, death matches, all of that kind of stuff. So I think we need to watch the way that we talk about this. But I think it comes down to this, because I am a data-driven software engineer. So I think if you look at the data of what women are looking for in an experience, we ran into this with playtesting. So when dudes would play the first combat engine of Rev 60, they would sit there and Holiday would attack and they'd want to like attack constantly and move over, and then we get the feedback like, oh, Holiday's too slow. Speed up combat, speed up combat, speed up combat. And if we hadn't sampled women in our player testing, that's what we would have done. And Revolution 60 would have been this game, just like everything else. What we found out with women, and I think this is why more women play DDR, is women vastly prefer timing-based mechanics. So if it's like boom, 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 and doing it in time to things, or pattern recognition, that is a kind of gameplay that women do enjoy more. Again, I'm speaking very generally. There's a ton of gender overlap here. But I think that if you look at a very specific kind of twitchy, hardcore, constant action, constant attack mechanic, it's something that like women just aren't looking for in our experiences as much. Things like emotional connection with your character. This is a really huge psychocognitive priority for women. So I think if you're kind of starting from the ground floor, I think it shows in our result. For us, it's like, we look at the woman consumer and we go like, I respect you. Like, there's not this, sometimes when you hear people talking about like Angry Birds, like there's a lot of like disgust talking about a 40-year-old mom playing Farmville or whatever, as if that's a bad thing. And I think you have this disgust for a certain kind of consumer it's like antipathy, like it's built into the culture. And I think we've got to get past that and just respect everybody here. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, you know, my money is just as good as anyone else's, you know? So, I don't know. I think we got to get past it. So, yeah, what's up?
Hi. So, I was wondering, so since you started your career in the game development industry and all the things that you've dealt with, and I'm sad to hear about, you know, all that, and it's really depressing, and it really makes me feel uncomfortable. And
it's weird. It feels like on my end too. You know?
So yeah. So do you see like more women, or have you been seeing more women enter the game development industry since you've been a huge part of it? Pioneer and like trying to get women to inspire women to.
I mean, I feel like I am, but I can also tell you I have an entire folder of letters on my computer from 12-year-old girls that see Gamergate going on, and they write me and they say like, I will not go into games. This is too scary.
Oh,
and
wow.
I see a lot of that.
That's interesting.
But I also see people that are out there and they write me and they say like, thank you for finally speaking up. I appreciate you fighting these battles and making it better for us. So I think the data is going to show the outcome in a while. Like, I hope we're making it better, or else I'm going through hell for nothing.
Right.
So I don't know. I think again, this is a very small N of experience, but for me, seeing Anita stand up helped me stand up. Seeing Zoe Quinn stand up gave me the strength to stand up. And like, I'm a vastly imperfect role model. Like, if you want a role model for your life, do not follow me. But I do think I'm standing up to this stuff as best as I can. And I hope that's an inspiration for other people. So, yeah, what's up?
Thank you again for sharing with us. It was just so eye-opening, and just thank you for having the courage to share with us and the whole world.
Absolutely.
I guess this is less of a question and just more of like a comment. When you're talking about how law enforcement they didn't know how to handle the Twitter threads, that's very scary. It's very scary for all of us. So do you think there will be changes in how officers are trained, or that they have to have training on social media threats, because that's the way.
So this is where I have to talk around the question very carefully. I can say one of my goals, and one of the reasons I choose to devote a lot of time on getting people prosecuted, is to get a pipeline set. So I can tell you I'm working with people that can help implement a pipeline to help make that happen. So I'm working on that. And I hope so. And I think it's engineers have what we call a multifactorial problem. So it's a multifactorial problem. You have officers aren't trained, there's no money for it, there's no chain of command of whose responsibility it is. Twitter is useless, or at least they have been historically. So I think we have to address all of this. I will say this, and if this video goes out online, they get mad at me, that's fine. Twitter is really serious about getting better. And you saw that with their new docs tools. And I can tell you privately, behind the scenes, they've sucked historically. I have a lot of faith in where they're going. I think Reddit is going to get better. I think, and I think media is going to get better about hiring women on the game journalism side. I put a lot of political pressure on them this year. And I do believe that when IGN or anyone decides to make a hire, I think they know that if they don't eventually get some diversity, they're going to get help from me and other women that are kind of looking at this. So I don't know. I don't think it's a simple question. If it was easy, we'd solve it. So yeah. Let's see. Do you want another question?
Yeah,
I'll give you two. Yeah.
Sure. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with women, like, say if it was like a startup, like indie company, and it's kind of like more women employees, do you also think that they get a harder time? They have a much harder time looking for funding.
Yes.
Like they're not usually, they put it up, but they're not getting funding and being ignored.
Do you know how many times I've talked to a venture capitalist that's a woman? One time in my entire career, and she was specifically brought into Apple to talk about this. This is the biggest problem that women entrepreneurs face. I could talk about it for 100 years. Statistics show women entrepreneurs succeed massively more than men do. That is the math of the matter. So if I were a venture capitalist, I would be very bullish on investing in women, but it's not the system because people generally don't value a group that they don't belong to. So it's a really big uphill battle that we've got to fight. So, cool. What's up?
Oh, I was just wondering, and thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
If we represent 49% of sales,
I
would assume, is there something about our purchasing patterns, our consumption patterns? Are we not asking for something that isn't getting through to the folks who are making these decisions and considering what you're doing kind of cute and niche, but not necessary? What are we, the 49%, not doing in order to say, yeah, you're right, this is what we want?
I can tell you for me, I have stopped buying games that don't feature women, console games. I just don't do it, and I critique it online because I have a big mic. So Assassin's Creed, I will never buy or play in another Assassin's Creed until they add some women to the cast. It's ridiculous. That game came out last year, 2014. Women are still just prostitutes that you pay money to distract somebody so you can sneak into a building. That's largely the function of women in Assassin's Creed. I just won't pay for it anymore. I try to reward companies I see doing good behavior with that, and try to make it very clear, like when I'm out there. So, like I say, for me, I think a lot of these problems are economic in nature, and I think ultimately they're going to care about money. I think what's happening now is, I think of a lot of the larger companies, like when they find a product that women like, I think it's almost serendipitous and accidental, because I think it's rarely a priority. So, I don't know. Yeah.
So how do you feel about characters that are overly sexualized but are badasses, like Kerrigan? She's super
or
sexualized.
Holiday. Yeah.
But she can do anything or everything, and it feels like it would be empowering to see yourself represented in that. But she, for whatever reason, has chitinous high heels all the time.
I can only speak for me because my thinking on this issue has changed. 2011, you can look at the designs for Revolution 60. I love sexy women that kick ass. What I've grown to realize is it's not that sexy, powerful women are inherently problematic if they're empowered. The problem is that's all we ever see. So, let me ask you a question. Can you name any woman in a game that is not the butt of a joke that's over 40?
Jaina Proudmoore?
From Uncharted 3?
No, from Warcraft. The Warcraft
Okay,
series.
I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, she is...
But you're reaching.
No, it's the game I play the most.
No, I mean there are very few examples. Right. So the problem isn't that sexualized women are problematic. It's that we don't see body type diversity. We don't see age diversity. We don't see moms in games. I'm not a parent, but I definitely want to talk to my friends that are. I'm sensing some anger and frustration over the way that moms will send you on a quest in Chrono Trigger, but they don't ever get to be the heroes. That's not right. So, and let me tell you one more story. I was doing a panel 3 years ago, And I'm reasonably tall and skinny, and shows in my art style. But I was talking at a science fiction convention where I was there with a group of women, and we were talking about this body type issue. I could sense the hurt in their voice of never seeing women that were like, bigger than like size 4, that weren't the butt of the joke. And I just think that these people are out there and they're consumers too, and they deserve to see different body types represented in media. So again, it's not that that's a problem, it's that we need to diversify past that, right? So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Cool. What's up?
So I'm actually working on publishing a mobile game right now.
Cool.
And I was wondering if you had any advice going into like the final couple months before we actually publish it, like as a successful mobile publisher.
Yeah.
Or like what challenges did you face before actually shipping the game?
What's your relationship with Apple?
Well, we were planning on doing Android, so I guess.
I don't know much about Android, but like, what's your relationship with Google? Is it the Google Play Store? Is that how they're distributed over there?
Yeah.
Do you have relations there?
No.
Do you know Eli at Touch Arcade?
No.
Do you have media contacts?
Not really.
You should get your ass in gear on that. I started working on media almost immediately after we shipped Rev 16. And I wouldn't call myself the most hyper-connected person out there, but I know people that work there, and it's not complicated. Like, you just look for people that you genuinely, honestly like their work, and you just talk to them. It's like, hey, I like that article that you wrote, and you just interact with them positively. If you're coming to a journalist like, oh my God, review my game, like they're going to tune you out. So, I think sometimes as software engineers, we worry so much about this, which is easy for us, and then we don't think about the marketing reality. And I think that's the biggest mistake that indies make. So start working on it. Cool. Do you have other questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned like everyone should get onto Twitter and start, making the networks.
Yes. Can you speak up just a little?
Sometimes it comes off as creepy when you're trying to like make friends with people online. So like, how do you go about making sure like you make these networks, but without like being this creepy person? It's like, hey, this is my game, kind of.
Well, I can tell you how I did it. Like I kind of exploded onto the scene with a piece. I think it was 2012 in the magazine with Glenn Fleischman called "Choose Your Character," what this topic is named after. And I knew I had a personal. I wanted to be known in the industry for something. Like, do you know what I mean? And for me, it was for being an employer that really cared about the women I worked with. So I kind of got into media with this really personal story about my struggle as a non-parent working with my co-founder having her first daughter all through crunch and ship of the game, and also with our lead engineer who is a woman who's a mega introvert, who kind of had to reach inside of herself and discover that she was awesome and could do a job. And I put together this really powerful viral story, and I told it from there. So I think the big thing is you need to have some value to the people that you're talking to. Like, it's easy for me to meet people in media nowadays because I'm a person that does stuff that's worth covering.
So you're saying to build a reputation? Build a
reputation. Find something you do. Find something you're interested in. Become an expert in some area and kind of kick butt at that. I can say that worked for me. You also have immense networking advantages that I don't. So, you can roll into situations and make friends and do that kind of stuff. Do something different. Like, one of my inherent psychological traits is when everyone is doing something, it makes me think there's something wrong with that, and I want to go over here and find something else to do. Like, I'm very kind of, suspicious by nature of groupthink. So try to do something different, differentiate yourself. That's how, sadly, I'm up here and I'm speaking, and I spoke out in Women in Tech because it feels very genuine to me personally. But the truth is, games are kind of a cult of personality. And the people that rise to the top here are strong personalities that people kind of want to watch or listen to what they have to say. So I think this is really at odds. I think you could do a whole different talk about how our industry is massively discriminatory towards introverts. Like, we are terrible towards them in our networking practices and every bit of it. But sadly, this industry rewards extroversion and kind of providing entertainment to people. So, you kind of work with the system that you have. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. What's up?
Okay, I'm kind of backtracking to like the discussion about like how we can put like different characters, like different fully developed characters rather than what we usually see. Like in the popular video games, you would usually see like some middle-aged male, ex-cop, ex-military guy, like the kind of main protagonist you would see in like a B-rated action movie. I find it really strange because a lot of the popular books I've seen people reading growing up were like coming-of-age stories. Or like minority, or like a minority growing up in old America. Back then. So, like, what can game developers do to like push into that kind of direction where we have characters who seem more human and relatable to us?
Have you played Watch Dogs? Don't do that. Don't do that. Play Watch Dogs and then read the Twitter of the man that led the writing on Watch Dogs and his horrible views on Gamergate. And then like look at his career and his views and don't do any of that. Like go find a different voice. Tell different characters. Look for different things to say. Again, the problem is we're so, we're homogenous at this point. It's so much of the same. Giant Spacekat is never, ever, ever, I swear to you on a stack of Bibles, we will never ship a game starring a white, angry, grizzled protagonist with a beard that wants to go kill some people. Like, we're just not going to do that. And I think, like, that's a smart choice economically. It separates you from everyone else. Like, so it's smart to go do that. As far as, like, finding diversity, one of our side projects at Giant Spacekat, one of the things we're working to get funded is Project Untold. It's done by Anna McGill. She has a fantastic idea for a visual novel system. And, she's writing a character as a person of color. For us, like, because we're a bunch of white people, we're going to make sure that we, preferably hire some black people on staff, like ask for their input, or at least like show it to friends and get feedback on that. So I think you have to do it proactively to kind of step outside your voice and your perspective. One of the flaws of Rev 60 is it's all four of those characters are different parts of my personality. And I think it's a good game, but I think that we can do better in the future. Like Mass Effect is really good because you have so many different perspectives. So I think we're just about out of time. Why don't we take 2 more questions and we'll close it off there. So, yeah, what's up?
I must say that Twitter, I've been mulling about actually using Twitter for the networking, keeping tabs on things, and I tried to get into it like 3 or 4 times, and I just figured the environment is too toxic, and you have a lot of bravado strength to put up with the stuff you have that you put up with, so I must say. However, I know networking, crucial, who you know.
Yep.
So I've been doing the networking thing, but I just want to ask, am I shooting myself in the foot here by ditching Twitter? Because I network, but Twitter is just like the signal to noise ratio.
You gotta do what feels right to you. You gotta do what feels right to you. I find it useful. I think it would be to your advantage to do it. I understand there's a huge psychological toll in using Twitter. So I don't know. I don't think there's one path to success. Like, don't look at what I do and say I've got to do that. Like, write interesting articles. Like, have something to say. I believe that generally speaking, I think if you have something valuable to give people, I think like an audience will flow to you. So provide value to people. I don't know. I think you're gonna be okay. I believe in you. Yeah. Cool. Let's get our last question. So, are we done?
I got one.
All right. Last question.
So this is a really nerdy game development question.
Yes.
So I recently just made a prototype for a mobile game, and I found one of the issues with it was there's the dimension of play space in the computer and the dimension in the mind, and those match. But I feel like the interface kind of eliminates at least one.
Okay.
Unless it's at most 2 dimensions, right? If you have 2 dimensions in either way, you can have 2 actions at once on a screen, and that's kind of like max of what I felt.
Okay.
Like, what's Giant Spacekat doing to try to like? Do you even like? I mean, I'm one of these, you know, grognardy tap guys, but like, is Giant Spacekat doing anything? Not necessarily to like accommodate us, because we don't need that, but like to solve kind of the gesture input problem, because I feel like it's a little lacking in terms of like depth.
Well, I can say, like, the overall mission of the games we ship is always going to be emotional mechanics. I do not care about action. I care about the emotion behind the action. So, you know, to that end, I don't think you should have to master controller of 15 buttons to be able to feel an emotion or tell a story. So I can say as an engineer, I am ruthless. I am the world's biggest jerk when my team comes to me with complicated features. And I say, I oversimplify, simplify, simplify, simplify. And I think you can look at Rev 60 and how we simplified a lot of these systems. There's magic behind it. If you want to think about the emotion of what you're doing, there's a lot of nuance in which ending you get, but you know, that's not a control issue.
Yeah,
so,
I think specifically, I like the combat in Rev 60 quite a bit, because it made use of like 2 dimensions, right? Like you know, the story stuff is like 1 dimensional, and that's fine because it's emotional and resonant. But like I really like that, like you had 2 things to think about and like 2 directions to move, and again it was also rhythmic rather than frantic, and I thought it worked
that's
out
all
well.
Jenna Hofstein and Carolyn Van Esseltine. I actually voted to kill the combat engine, and my team overruled me. So one of our most beloved features of the game, I tried to kill. So anyway, we'll take it from there. So cool. Well, thank you all for coming. Yeah.
Thank you.